sometimes your footage is too good for your computer. And I mean that quite literally. Sometimes the footage is so high resolution and so information dense that it requires too much computing power for your computer to be able to play it back correctly when it's in a timeline with tons of cuts. Once you throw multiple instances of a clip in a timeline and you start telling the computer to play back at real speed, hundreds of clips, it starts getting bogged down and it has a hard time processing really high definition footage. When this happens, you're going to want to make proxies. Creating proxies in a proxy workflow is one of the first things that you're going to want to do. In fact, if I have footage that is 4K resolution or higher, or footage of almost any resolution if it's recorded in RAW, especially if I have BRAW or R3D clips, I'm going to immediately make proxies after importing into my project, before I even organize. You're not even going to be able to mark your clips if they can't play back. It seems a little insane to record video that computers can't even play back. Like, what's the point if we can't watch it? Well, the computer does have the power to play back individual clips. It just doesn't have the computing power to play back in real time all of your edits in your timeline with high resolution footage. We may have already defined this in the course, but I'll do it again. A proxy is essentially a small stand-in clip that you use for editing purposes only. It's small, it's compressed, it gets the point across so that you as an editor can focus on making sure that your pacing and your flow is correct. You can spend time nitpicking frames because you can actually see all the frames because they're not getting dropped when you're playing back the footage. So if you have really high resolution footage, you're going to want to make proxies so that you can work off of those proxies first. Then when it's time to export the final version of the video, then you'll export using the original footage so that it's super pretty. Unfortunately, it does mean that us as editors are often looking at pretty downscaled, not super pretty footage, but it ends up looking pretty eventually once we do the final export. So I have this clip. It was recorded in RAW, and it is 3840 by 2160, which is 4K. If I open this up and I push play, it takes a second to even play back because that kind of has to like load the video into the RAM, I think is what's happening. So we're going to want to make proxies of this. Luckily, Adobe has made this really easy. Premiere has a proxy workflow built right in. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to go down to proxy. I'm going to create proxies. Now these presets will be different whether you have a PC or a Mac. There is a way to make new presets. That's fairly complicated and it's a fairly niche problem. If you have footage that's a regular 16:9 rectangle, the Adobe presets will work for you. You can choose either QuickTime or H.264. For H.264, you can choose low, medium, or high. For QuickTime, you can choose between ProRes High, Medium, or Low, Cineform, or DNX HR. Now, these two things up here, ignore them. Those are my custom presets that I built when I was exploring with my YouTube channel. Typically, the most editing-friendly and least processing power is going to be H.264 low on a PC and QuickTime ProRes low on a Mac. Then you can pick the destination. You can either put it in the original storage location, so where our raw footage is. That's fine for some instances. I personally like to know where all of my footage is. My raw footage is sacred. I'd rather not modify or touch those folders at all once they come out of production. So I usually try to set my own destination, and I will make a proxy folder in my digital media folder rather than the raw footage folder. And then you hit OK. This is one of the reasons why it's important to have the entire Adobe suite and not just Premiere, because creating proxies requires Media Encoder. Premiere can export natively right out of the program, but Media Encoder is a little bit more robust and it does a lot more encoding. And you can see right now, whenever you make proxies, Premiere is going to automatically boot your proxy workflow out to Media Encoder and have Media Encoder handle the actual encoding so that you can still work in Premiere if you want to. So now we have made that proxy. There's a few ways to verify that that proxy actually worked. Let's click this to follow it to its source. Now we can see we indeed have a proxy, and it's just the name of the clip _ proxy. We indeed have a proxy in our Finder. We're going to look in our metadata for a proxy, there's no proxy right now. So we're going to right click at the top, hit metadata display, type proxy, and then I'm going to click proxy and proxy file path. Click OK. Now we're going to go look for that. It says proxy is attached, and it gives us the exact location where that proxy is. So now we can hit a switch and we can toggle between editing the raw footage and editing the proxy. It's considered the same clip. Currently, I'm working with the raw footage. My proxy is attached, but I'm working with the raw footage. If I drag this raw footage into the timeline, and then I toggle to the proxy, this is now going to show the proxy. What we've essentially done is make a smaller, less demanding clone. And we've told Premiere that this file now exists two places. If we want the whole thing, look at this location. And if we want the small thing, look at this location. So now it can look two different directions, one for the proxy, one for the original. This is the original. I'm going to come down to this button right here, this little switcheroo icon thing. This is toggle proxies. If I turn that on, now we're looking at the proxy. Now, if you look really closely at this image, you will see the pixels change. This is the raw. It's very clear and crisp. I turn on the proxies, and it's a little bit fuzzier. You can see some artifacting in his shirt. You can see when it's the raw, there's some pretty universal noise in the black of his shirt. When I turn on proxies, there's like a lot of squares. What it's done is it's compressed that information and made bigger chunks, which are called artifacts. I play back, and instead of taking a second to process the clip because there's so much information, it plays back speedy quick. This is the way to make sure that you have a really responsive computer. Make proxies of everything that's 4K and bigger. It's super, super, super lightning responsive now. You might have hundreds of clips, and you might have to overnight your proxies. And typically that's what I do. I will acquire the data, and then I'll make sure that the hard drive is good, and then I'll import everything into the project file. And once I know that I understand the project file and I've imported everything that I need to, I'll immediately set up proxies. And I will set up 100% of the proxies to go for as long as they need to go. And usually it'll take about at least a night. So I'll overnight my proxies, and then I can actually start assistant editing the next day.